And a hearty welcome to one and all, and happy Friday. This is episode number 112 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me here on this late Friday afternoon. Beautiful day, a little chilly in the morning, but a beautiful day in New York. If you're checking out this episode on the YouTube channel or enjoying the content, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you're catching up with this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, click like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. So this episode, we're going to go back to our continuing series of some of what I consider to be most underrated film performances. And today, we'll feature an actor who I really haven't mentioned very much on the channel, despite being a big fan of his, Kurt Russell. Now, some of you know, Kurt Russell has had literally one of the great careers in the history of Hollywood. He was a child star. He was discovered, if that's the proper word, by Disney, literally, Walt Disney, and signed to a contract. He was what they used to call a contract player with Disney. And as a child actor, made a number of movies of varying degrees of success. As part of what Disney used to have, like a showcase of films they would show on Sunday night on TV. It was a big thing, especially into the 1970s. But he made movies like The Strongest Boy in the World, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. They were silly movies, but they showed him to be a distinctive, not only a distinctive looking young man, but a distinctive talent, a glint in his eye, a little bit of mischief in mind. And Disney was a huge fan of his. The Walt Disney, there is actually a lot of interviews and moments where Walt Disney talked about how much he really loved Kurt Russell's talent. And if anything, he predicted that he was not just going to be a child star, that he was going to make the turn to adulthood and have a real career as an adult. And we've certainly seen other Ron Howard as an example of somebody whose dad, Rance, was in the business, and Ron Howard was a child star, Flipper, and Andy Griffith, and Happy Days. That's where I was stumbling to try to get out, Happy Days. But Ron Howard sensed that his time as an actor was limited, and he went into directing. And you look at Macaulay Culkin, who had the huge success as a young actor, and then had a lot of personal problems. It's very difficult to have a kind of uninterrupted run. Reese Witherspoon is an example of someone who did it on the other side. And I'm definitely going to be doing a most underrated performances episode on her. But somebody who came on the scene, burst on the scene like a thunderbolt with the movie called Man in the Moon, and really never stopped until she was no longer a child star, but she was, wow, she's awesome in whatever she's in. Kurt Russell is famous for certain kind of cult films. Worked with John Carpenter on The Thing, which is a very, very solid remake of a 1950s horror movie, sci-fi, produced and we think also directed by the great Howard Hawks. And he did the other, another John Carpenter cult film, Escape from New York, then later Escape from LA, and Big Trouble in Little China, another on the list of Generation X standards that I'm supposed to love, but I like. I don't love The Thing, the Carpenter version. I much prefer the original, which I think is incredible. And I like Big Trouble in Little China. I don't love it. In the John Carpenter filmography, I will put Roddy Piper in They Live ahead of John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. I think the movie is just okay. Visually, very interesting. There's some funny moments and some laughs. Where are they? Well, they're in a house of ill repute. Do you mean like a brothel? Well, yeah, if you want to use a nice word, they're at a brothel, like that sort of thing. But Kurt Russell made a lot of action movies. Tango and Cash with Stallone, which I don't care what anybody says, the movie's a fucking rip. And I know it's kind of paint by the numbers action, and it's very on the nose and obvious. I love that movie. That's another Stallone film that I wish had gotten a sequel, because despite the fact the story is beyond preposterous, like almost nothing in Tango and Cash could ever happen. It's so much fun. And the guys really had good chemistry. They really meshed well on screen. The stuff with the sister, Terry Hatcher, we think that it's Stallone's girlfriend, and Kurt Russell wants to get with her. And then when he realizes it's not his girlfriend, it's his sister, his reaction is just amazing. And before I get to the movie I'm going to talk about in detail in this episode, the moment in Tango and Cash where both guys are about to be bumped off by Jack Palance's bad guy, Yves Perret. I think I might have mentioned this. No actor in history has looked less like an Yves Perret than Jack Palance, but we go with it. They're about to be killed, and Brian James, terrific actor, who's in Blade Runner, unfortunately passed away, wasn't very old. He plays this, I guess he's Scottish, and he's about to kill Kurt Russell's Gabe Cash. And Kurt, as a way of distraction to try to give him and Stallone a few seconds to kind of figure out how they're going to get out of this mess because they're about to be killed, he starts screaming about how if you're going to bleep and kill me, you're going to fucking do this and fucking do that, fucking do this and fucking do that. Just don't let him do it. I don't want to be killed by some whiny cocksucking son of a... I want to be killed by an American. Screaming, I want to be killed by an American at the top of his lungs. As Stallone is looking at him like, this guy is fucking gone. It almost felt ad-libbed. But Kurt Russell was in a lot of box office hits. And Escape from LA, oddly enough, Kurt had two big action movies that came out in 1996. He had Executive Decision, which I argue is the most under-the-radar great action movie to come out in the 90s. Kurt plays a star. Halle Berry, a little bit of weird casting. John Leguizamo, and Steven Seagal, who was still headlining films in that era, plays a supporting role. And it's the best performance of Seagal's career, for whatever that's worth. And that was a moderate hit. It should have been a bigger hit. And he did the sequel to Escape from New York. I thought Escape from LA, that's the movie. I thought it was fantastic. It tanked at the box office. I thought it was really good. And in the kind of COVID era, there is an angle, without spoiling it, because the movie is worth seeing. If you like Escape from New York, well, the sequel sucks. No, it doesn't. It's really good. Beautifully cast. But there is a, it's not really a COVID angle, but there is an angle about a killer virus that the movie gets into, which I'm telling you, it's going to land differently now if you're not familiar with the film. If you watch the movie in 2019, this whole thing with the virus is not going to mean anything. And now you're going to be laughing your ass off. It's so much like the movie is better now because of that. But anyway, 1997, summer, was a huge summer movie season in good ways and bad. Good ways because we got Face Off, which is easily a top 10 all-time great action movie. Nicolas Cage also had Con Air. It's okay. Malkovich is funny. Ving Rhames. It's not that good. It's just okay. It's entertaining. It also had two huge budgeted tentpole films that did not get there. Speed 2 Cruise Control. What a fucking disaster that was. It had one, Willem Dafoe. Some of the memes you see with Willem Dafoe are taken from that. How do you like the vacation so far? Dafoe's always tremendous. Batman and Robin. Love George Clooney. Love Arnold Schwarzenegger. Alicia Silverstone. Childhood crush. She's fucking great. The movie is terrible. It's painfully bad. Austin Powers International Man of Mystery and Breakdown were released, the movie I'm going to talk about, Breakdown, summer 1997, was released the same day as the first Austin Powers, which was expected to be a hit, but outperformed expectations. Oh, My Best Friend's Wedding was that summer. Huge hit. And I would argue the best romantic comedy I've ever seen because it doesn't do what you're expecting it to do. Breakdown. Took me 9 minutes to get to it. Apologies. But I get pumped up when talking about this stuff. You all know that. If you're still following this channel, you know I get excited. I still get excited for movies. But Kurt Russell in Breakdown, number 6, most underrated performance, or I should say number 6 in the series, most underrated film performances. And oddly enough, in an earlier episode, I talked about an all-time classic movie, North by Northwest, Alfred Hitchcock, in which Cary Grant's lead performance kind of gets buried a little bit because the story is so outlandish and there's so many other incredible things about North by Northwest. And because Cary Grant was Cary Grant, it's easy to take the performance, for, pardon the pun, for granted. We don't focus on just how good Cary is at what he does because there's so many other amazing things and set pieces. And how the fuck did Hitchcock pull this off in 1959 and all of that? So Kurt Russell in Breakdown plays an everyman, not a superhero, not somebody who has special talents or skills to handle the kind of craziness he's about to get into. He is a regular guy he's an attractive man. And Kathleen Quinlan, who had recently been nominated for supporting actress for Apollo 13, her career had kind of risen again because she was around in the 80s and then she seemed to disappear and suddenly come out of nowhere and is fantastic in Apollo 13. There was a lot of talk. She could actually walk away with supporting actress because her character almost forms the emotional center of Apollo 13. But in Breakdown, Kurt plays a character like what Cary Grant does in North by Northwest. He is an everyman, doesn't look like a normal person, but he is an everyman who is not trained to handle the situations that arise in the story. So he and his wife, from what we're led to believe, don't have a lot of money. They got a nice new car. They got a really nice new Jeep Grand Cherokee. Beautiful. They're what seems to be a road trip, but it's not really a road trip. They're moving. They're in the process of moving and they are financially strapped, even though they have the appearance of money. While they're on this road trip, I'm going to have to go into some spoiler territory. Russell seems to run afoul of one of the locals at a gas station. Terrific actor, MC Gainey. He usually plays this kind of threatening sort of a character. And he kind of lets himself be bullied, presumably because this is a bigger individual and he's not looking to start any shit. He's not looking to get stuffed into a garbage can by this guy who is obviously bigger and in a bad mood. And he and his wife, they just want to get to where they're going and try to start their new life and begin fresh, get out of debt, and all of these things. So inexplicably, despite the fact that it is a new Jeep Grand Cherokee, a beautiful car, as I've said, the car just breaks down. And we wonder, did that guy that seemed to be a random stranger at the gas station and the Quick Mart, did he fuck with their car? We don't really know. But it's very suspicious. That's suspicious, that's weird. There'd be no reason for a new car, that everything is topped off. There'd be no reason for it to overheat, or there's no reason for the car to break down. So that's the sort of the inkling of a Hitchcockian setup. There's no reason for this car to break down. There's got to be some sinister doings. Ooh. So a helpful trucker, and we're in an area where everybody seems to be driving, an 18-wheeler, a very helpful and friendly trucker, played by one of the greats. No exaggeration, and I like to use the phrase one of the greats, J.T. Walsh, who unfortunately passed away not long after this. His final film, I believe, was Pleasantville, which is another movie at some point I'm going to be doing an episode on. But J.T. Walsh was a fantastic actor, often played villains or villainous characters, or in Sling Blade, Billy Bob Thornton, same year. He doesn't really play either. But he was someone who had a great face for the movies, and his line readings, especially when playing heavies. Man, that guy was good. He was just deadly with those line readings. So, helpful trucker sees this, nice, attractive couple. It's a new car. We don't know what's going on. And they're on the side of the road. They're in the middle of Arizona or New Mexico. They are fucked. There is nothing, presumably, for miles. And this is the days before cell phones, GPS, Waze, how long or how far are we from the next town. They are in the ass end of nowhere on a freeway. There is nothing. There's no water. There's nothing. They could get out of their car and start walking and drop dead 2 miles. And we have no idea. They're in serious trouble. J.T. Walsh, helpful trucker, gets off and asks them what's going on, what's happened, can I help? Now, Kurt Russell, his character, Jeff, does not automatically trust this guy. You can tell there's a little bit of reserve in him because this is still not making sense. Why did our car break down? He's trying to calculate a whole bunch of things. He does not immediately run to this guy's arms, so to speak. Roll credits. Oh my God, our savior. But Kathleen Quinlan as Amy, she's restless, she's hot, she's already pissed off. And here you have what appears to be a friendly guy offering to give them both a ride into the next town so that they can get some help for their car. He wants both of them to get in the cab. But Kurt Russell is convinced, no, this can't be right. There has to be something that can be done. He doesn't say it this way, but he knows that if he has a minute to clear his head, he should be able to, whatever's wrong with this car, it's a new fucking car. So Kathleen Quinlan gets on the 18-wheeler with good old friendly J.T. Walsh playing Red, or Warren is his real name. Red Bar is what he goes by. And she disappears, and they give him the instructions. I'm taking her to there's a local diner, and it's a truck stop, and it's a couple of miles up the road. So, he doesn't say, heaven forbid, if you have to walk, you're probably going to make it before you die. But the place is not 20 miles away. On this count, he's telling them the truth. So they go off in the 18-wheeler, and Kathleen Quinlan as Amy is very happy. She's in the air conditioning. They go off. And Kurt Russell as Jeff fixes the car. So this guy hadn't stumbled along when he did, and if Amy had just given him a minute to think, he would have been able to get the car running again. So he goes to the truck stop. Where's my wife? We've never seen her. What do you mean? She didn't come in here, sir. And when you're watching the movie, you're not sure who's telling the truth, who is deliberately feeding him misinformation, and who is, honestly, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, mister. Or, I know exactly what you're talking about, mister. And that's where you get into the Hitchcockian angle of you have no idea who to trust. You don't know who's on the level. Is it a sinister plot? Is it some kind of crazy conspiracy? What we know is she got on that 18-wheeler and she did not end up where that friendly trucker said she was going to be dropped off. And now I'm going to depart from spoiler territory and speak in generalities, because I'm telling you, if you have not seen this movie, it's available on multiple platforms. I know for a fact, for sure, it's on Paramount Plus, it's on MGM Plus, it has been on Amazon Prime, it may still be free streaming. It was on what was HBO Max and now Max. It is a movie that is readily available. And when I tell you, I hate spending other people's money. I understand me talking about you shouldn't have to rent it. I get it. Bro, it's $3. Don't be stupid. I know. I still don't like telling people to spend their money. But if you have never seen Breakdown, this is why I'm going to lean away from spoilers. I just gave you the first 15 minutes worth of information. You will not believe how good this movie is. And you will not believe what Kurt Russell does as Jeff Taylor at the center. As I teased at the beginning, he is not a man who is trained for combat. He is not trained for high pressure, life and death situations. He's the kind of guy that you look at him and say, he appears to have had a silver spoon up his ass his whole life. Famous statement from Shawshank Redemption by Morgan Freeman's Red when discussing Andy Dufresne. And in that case, he was almost kind of right without knowing the particulars of his character. But this guy, Jeff, is way more resourceful than he first appears. And I don't think he knows how resourceful it is he is, because we've seen movies where characters, we're not surprised when they turn out to be tougher than they appear. But he almost seems genuinely shocked when he's forced to go into Cary Grant action hero mode, where he's not Superman. This is not even Bruce Willis, who's a lot smaller than Kurt Russell, surviving one crazy, blow up explosion, being shot at 3,000 times. This is a regular guy in a terrible conspiracy. he just happened to stumble into because he looked a certain way and was driving a new car. It's literally just that simple. So it is in the manner of North by Northwest also in the sense that Jeff plays a lot of the movie on defense. He doesn't have enough information to make certain decisions. He is having terms dictated to him for large chunks of the movie, especially in the first half, where he really doesn't have any choice but to nod his head and more or less do as he's told. And we feel the growing paranoia, the desperation in Kurt. But as he, believably, and this is another thing that I love about this movie, in the last 30 years, you could easily make the argument this is the best realistic action movie of the last 3 decades. And by realistic, there's no Terminator level daring do. There's no Die Hard where there were explosions that would cause powder burns. There's nothing in this movie that does not make sense from an action movie standpoint, from a logical standpoint. Well, he would totally be dead. No. But Kurt's character survives a number of very close calls and gets an opportunity to go on offense because he's playing catch up and playing defense. And it feels like, well, not only is his wife going to die, but he's going to die too. There doesn't seem to be a way out of this. He's just fucked. He doesn't know who to trust, if anybody. You're in a town, there's not that much of a police presence. And it's not like you're going to get the FBI on the phone and race over here to help. It's on him to save Amy and himself and right the wrongs that have taken place in the story. And Kurt, character of Jeff, without any training, with nothing but the fact that he is clearly a very intelligent individual. He has only his rage and his desire to see his wife again to keep him going. And he fights back, but it's always in ways that are believable. Much like in North by Northwest, when Cary Grant finally gets to go on offense and start fucking with the bad guys instead of him being always the much put upon, I'm being chased. Well, not anymore. I'm right here. What are you going to do now? So Russell has these moments where we feel his anger, we feel his fear and his hurt. It is written all over his face. It's some of his best film acting. Now, people might argue when taking Kurt Russell's career as a whole, there was a lot of talk that he should have gotten an Oscar nomination for the movie Miracle, which was, I think, 3 years prior, 2004. I don't have any problem with that. His impersonation of Herb Brooks, the real-life U.S. Olympic hockey team 1980 coach, it's fantastic. What he does in Breakdown, again, action movies are not judged the same in almost all cases as straightforward dramas, period pieces. They're just not. But if you just watch Kurt in this film, watch what he does with his eyes, watch how he acts with his face and his body, and how his body language starts to shift as his character moves from reactive to active. And people who, again, taking him for granted, when they think that he's a pushover, you know what? A stiff wind will blow this boy over. That kind of thing. Suddenly, they're scrambling. This motherfucker's crazy. He will stop at nothing. No, you're goddamn right he'll stop at nothing. You took his wife. You threatened to take his life. In the immortal words of Sylvester Stallone, when this is over, I'm coming to get him. In this movie, it's, I'm coming to get her. You thought you had me? You thought you had us? You thought wrong. You fucked with the wrong white-collar, helpless white guy. You fucked with the wrong one. Because I'm not as helpless as you thought. So you have moments in the movie where, from the audience perspective, where you really have no idea what's going to happen. Because there are X factors sprinkled all over the story throughout. And it's to the movie's credit, we don't lose any of the threads. The side characters all pay off. Everybody's place in the story makes sense. Okay, this person knew nothing. This person knew nothing. That person knew nothing. That person knew everything. We don't lose sight of any of that. And without spoiling it, Kurt's character rises, and then he rises some more. And when it comes time to deal and dispense justice, he's still, in his way, he's not a killer. There is still room for mercy. There's a famous scene, a moment from the trailer. Again, if you were to go on to any of the platforms and just watch the trailer, there's a moment where Kurt Russell, holding a gun, and he is very disheveled, sweaty mess, holding a gun on someone we don't know. Could it be J.T. Walsh? Maybe. MC Gainey? Maybe. But he says, you better pray she's alive. And the implication is obvious, but it's also giving us a window into this guy's mind. The implication is if she's dead, you're dead. If she's alive, maybe you're not dead. He isn't saying, well, I'm going to fucking kill you either way, bro. You're dead. No. He's still thinking like a rational person who wants his wife back and who is now at a point at the end where he actually might start shooting, but he's giving the guy a little hope. He's giving him an out. And now it's just a question of how will it shake out? And the ending sequence, again, no spoilers, which takes place, not surprisingly, a farmhouse. It actually goes into dirtier and scarier territory than you expect. And nothing that you would expect from a summer action movie. This movie is much darker, and it's going places where you don't think, when you realize just how, pun intended, how deep this shit goes. Wow! Through it all, you have Kurt at the center, fighting and scratching and clawing and acting his proverbial ass off to make the audience believe he's really going through this shit. Like, there's no mugging for the camera. There's no asides like he had with Sly in Tango and Cash where, okay, they're having fun with the audience. Nothing like that. Straightforward, a story of real life horror, a kidnapping, and what the fuck are you going to do? It's just on you. There's nobody to help. What are you going to do? You know, he's not Liam Neeson in Taken. But for huge chunks of the movie, he does come across like a guy who has a very particular set of skills. They fuck with the wrong guy. And with that, we've reached the end of episode 112 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. Most underrated performances, the sixth entry, Kurt Russell, sensational as Jeff Taylor in John Mostow's 1997 classic, and a movie that has increased in estimation. It was a moderate box office hit over the years. I'm urging, imploring you all, if you have not seen it, see it. It's unlike any action movie you've ever seen. But if you caught up with episode 112 on the YouTube channel and haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you're listening to this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 113 real soon. Till then, enjoy the rest of your Friday.